Book 2, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for another bookish update. I don't know how many days it's been between the last one, because I don't think I did the last one that long ago, probably like a few days ago, but I also have some books to haul for you guys, books I purchased recently, so I figured I'll also use it as an update. So I think I already talked about reading or finishing The Star and Its Strange Moon, which is a kind of a fantasy, kind of sci-fi type story where it's the two timelines. One is set in the 90s and all the way through the 2000s. But then there's also the 60s timeline where this actress, Gemma Turner, she would do all these beach movies back in the day, but then she decided to move on, expand her film career, but she wasn't as successful as she wanted to be. She kind of, her films, a lot of them bombed, and then her agent gets her a film that by a French director, so she gets to go to France if she does this film, by Thierry Valdon. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I don't know the French language. I never took that language. And it's a kind of horror film. It's a horror film with vampires, and but the director is kind of snob. He had promised her that he would let her write because she wants to be a screenwriter. He sends her his script and she realizes it's not very good. He's clearly not familiar with horror films at all. And you do get confirmed that he's never watched a horror film before. He just wants to do it for, to put it on his resume of, oh, I did this really brilliant out of the box horror film that's different. And she doesn't, and she agrees to do it, especially when the Valdon says, I will let you help me write the script. And she ends up getting there, but she butts heads with everybody. Everyone is kind of like, oh, is the American, and they're very, critical for, in fact, Thierry's wife was gonna play the title character, the main character, Giselle Dumas, but he passed it on to the Gemma, who was this beautiful model, actress and model that he saw her and immediately was enchanted by her. So Thierry's wife does not like her, and her co-stars kind of dismiss her, and the Thierry dismisses her and doesn't take her seriously, and her agent also, who's supposed to have her back and support her, is he's very submissive to the director, and when he dismisses the fact that she wants to be a writer, and he tells her, why are you pushing this? You need to submit to this director, and you shouldn't submit, you think you're a good writer, huh? They're very condescending about it. And so she doesn't get along. In fact, she almost wants to quit. She starts to want to quit, but she needs this for her career. But then one night, on the 9th day of filming, she literally disappears in an alleyway. In a poof, she's gone. She just disappears. She doesn't they don't see her leave. There's no trap doors or anything. She just all of a sudden disappears off screen. And they think she's either dead or she's left. They don't understand what's going on. Everyone's freaking out in the 60s, but then she herself wakes up in this other world, this place that looks like the time period the movie takes place in. and she finds out she is seen as the character of Giselle Dumas, and she basically has to survive in the story of the movie, and of course she has hindsight of what's going to happen, and it's this crazy situation, and there might be a devil in disguise that might be playing with the movie, might be playing director and puppeteering everything. So in the present day, the other timeline, you have this character Christopher Kent. And when he was a kid back in the late 80s, it was him and his mom. His mom was a singer, but she was an alcoholic. And they traveled a lot. They weren't, she wasn't her career wasn't going well. And they would always stay at these motels, and they get to this one particular one that has this theme of old Hollywood. And his mom has a visceral reaction to this picture of who happens to be Gemma Turner. She is has this very hateful reaction to this woman and even attempts to destroy the picture. But then, after this and after Christopher kind of calms her down and everything, she has a breakdown, and then she had died that night after probably going on a bender or something. And so his uncle by marriage his uncle shows up, brings him home. He ends up being raised and living with his mom's sister, his aunt, and his cousins. And he, as an adult, he goes to college for filmmaking. He even has a girlfriend whose dad works on one of those type shows. It's like a cop show, like CSI or Law and Order or something. And so they're both, and and his girlfriend also wants to be a filmmaker and everything. And he's still kind of obsessed with the actress in the photograph, Gemma, and is trying to find out everything about her and find out about the last film she did, that film, the moon or something, the strange moon. I'm not gonna even try the French pronunciation of it, but the strange moon, and he becomes obsessed with this film, and he finds out that every decade, every 10 years, they will play this film at an underground theater, and it's very mysterious. You can't talk about the movie, you can't talk about the film. They even give you a mask and a cloak to wear if you get invited. You get a special invitation and everything. And so and it turns out that his girlfriend's father gets tickets, but he doesn't want to go. So the girlfriend is able to get her and Christopher tickets. And they go, and they're fast in there or something. The film has this weird effect, this negative effect on the viewer, on them, and on the people who watch the film every time it plays. And the girlfriend, Ivy's her name, she doesn't want anything to do with this. She kind of gets annoyed because Christopher is completely obsessed with this, and so he's kind of, she kind of pushes him away a little bit, and while he's still trying to figure this out, talk to people that knew Gemma. He talks to her old boyfriend Charlie, who was a musician and kind of an ass. Comes across a group of people that are obsessed with this film, and it's their mission to to discuss this film discreetly, and find ways to discuss this film without getting in trouble. And they have all these crazy theories about it. And and I'm gonna stop there with summarizing it, because I think this is what happened. I think I did talk about it a little bit last time, but I don't think I explained the plot. I don't think. And if I did, I apologize if you already heard this. I don't remember. But yeah, it's a really great story. There was a negative review of it, a one or two star review. There were 1 or 2 star reviews. I didn't even bother with them because I feel like I need to stop, or at least not do it as much. Read the reviews on Goodreads, because sometimes when I'm like, actually when I'm sometimes when I'm like just sitting there taking a break at work, I will look at Goodreads if it's a book. I mean, I try not to do that. I try to prioritize reading a book during my breaks instead of watching TV or looking at my phone. And I more often do that. I mean, it's really more like my, not, more like just a quick little, like, trying to, find out what people think, whether people think because I'm uncertain myself or I'm thinking about DNFing the book. But at the same time, I think that's a bit of a risk, because I think, Goodreads has a bad habit of influencing me. I mean, I won't even give a book, I might not even give a book a chance. Now, I will still continue, the only reason why I haven't completely cut it off, one, because I don't have as much of a problem with Goodreads anyways, a lot of people do. I mean, some things annoy me, I run into problems every so often, like the other day, I had to re-log into the Goodreads app on my phone and create a new password and everything, and that was kind of annoying, but I never had like a hardcore problem with it. I mean, it is fascinating watching the videos that discuss Goodreads and critique it, or like have criticisms of it and even complain about it. Like, those videos are really interesting, but for me personally, I've never had like a serious problem where I just want to completely cut it off. Like, there might be a period of time where I'm, kind of so annoyed that I might think about it for like a second. But most of the time, I keep going, and I like going on there to look at as I said, I do like going on there reading the reviews. And I will actually read them. I won't just look at the rating. I will actually read the reviews. So I never have, I've never had a really problem with Goodreads. I understand why people don't want to use it. And then there's the whole people have issues with Amazon, which I respect. I understand. Please don't judge me because I still use it. But, I do. Not that much, in my defense. But anyway, so I do feel like sometimes those reviews can influence me, but it does help when I go to, like, the Outpost bookshop and I'm trying to narrow it down to 3 books. Then I will, when I don't, and a lot of times I will grab more than 3 books to look at and I will read the reviews if I can get the signal, because sometimes there are times in that building where I don't always get the signal. I mean, I never get it at Books A Million, so I can never do it at Books A Million. But then I can't sit down at Books A Million because it's a small Books A Million, so there's no cafe. But yeah, so I didn't notice there were, but I ended up not bothering to look at them because I enjoy the book, and I also didn't want to. Sometimes if I really like a book, because I do care and I get very passionate, I can get, emotional, but the difference is I never actually say, I'm too chicken to actually say anything to people anyway, to actually message them and be like, how dare you not love my favorite book? Or like, well, I disagree with you. Even if I feel like I could debate it in a polite way and, I'm still too much of a chicken to message people, discuss it with them. But, so I didn't even bother reading it, but you see there were some in there. But I personally enjoy it. I haven't read A Time for Witching, I think it's called. And then there's one more book that she wrote, but I don't remember what it's called. So I think this is her 3rd book. So I guess her junior book. if you're going by the grade level, grade levels. But I thought it was really fun. I enjoyed the premise. I like how we got a little bit, but I also like multiple timelines in books. I find those really fun. I like seeing the parallel between the two timelines, or comparing them, or seeing the juxtaposition of those timelines, and I always like that concept. And I've never been confused or anything, and of course I also read a lot of books that acknowledge that it's a different timeline. But and plus it's not a real time travel in the traditional sense, because you don't know if she actually time traveled or not. It seems like she didn't really not a real time traveler. She didn't not really traveling to the past necessarily. But it mimics the time period, put it that way. So I thought that was really fun. I mean, and so I like that we got a little bit of modern, but we also got a taste of a different time period, like the 1800s. And that was really fun. And just seeing this, and this is one of those books where you have someone who knows who are aware of the historical stories, and or aware that this is, see this as the movie and everything, and so she, and she has all this hindsight, so she reacts to everything, and reacts to things about the situation, like, oh, I know this is gonna happen, and no, you can't do this, and then kind of comparing Veldon's story to what happens in other traditional stories, horror vampire stories. So yeah, there are vampires, but the vampires don't take a prominent part of the story. So I wouldn't call this a vampire book. I was thinking it was gonna be a vampire book because there are vampires in the story, but they're not a big thing in the story. Like, they are there for a little while, but then they don't play as prominent a role. But yeah, I had fun time with it. I love the whole storyline, and how it kind of looks at the Hollywood in the in those the 60s and everything. Kind of, that's part of it too. I mean, it doesn't take over the whole. It's not the whole thing, but it does kind of look at old Hollywood from the 60s. When the beach movies, and I think Marilyn Monroe was the 60s and was making movies in the 60s, and that, like, I love stories where old Hollywood is part of the plot. I think those are really fun. Like I said, I got that one book by Joyce Carol Oates, Blonde. I haven't read it yet, but I do want to, and obviously it's gonna talk old Hollywood and stuff like that. So after I read that, I picked up, we have these two books, Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson. In this one we have our main character. He goes back. He and Wayne are on another case. There's someone taking justice and the law into their own hands. And I say justice because I feel like, they're not following the law. The bad guy's not trying to make their own law. I really like the change in the dynamic between Steeris, I think that's how you say her name, and Wax. I feel like she's trying to work with him and trying to make their relationship easier. Of course, they're going to be stuck with each other. That might change later. I don't know if it will or not, but so and I like how she's, every man's gotta have a hobby. And at one point they're going to a party, and normally we have to, interact with these other rich people and society and everything and blend in, and we gotta be social. And he's just not into that. He's not that kind of person. He's very much man of the job, and he's just very, he's not good. He's just not good at being social. But this time around, they're going to a party, and she's offering to, like, okay, tonight is all about you in this job, this mission. So she does realize these cases are important. And, she feels like she's got to let him do his job. So their relationship is actually kind of cute. I don't know if it's ever going to get, like, really romantic at any point, because it's just they're just engaged. But yeah, I really like them together. And I like Wayne. I feel like Wayne is a character that you either love him or you hate him, because he can be kind of obnoxious and annoying, and, like, there's things he does, like, at one point with another character, he's doing a belching contest, which is silly and ridiculous, gross. So it's like, you might, you potentially find it gross, but you also find it really funny, actually, and and just. But I also am very impressed with his ability to mimic people, disguise himself as other people. I think that's actually a really cool idea. The fact that someone could be so good, and he constantly talks about, not just the look, but the voice. You got to get the voice right. To me, for him, that's important. If you can do that, you could be fine. I mean, there's always the risk of they ask you questions that you don't know about because you didn't do a lot of research. Although he kind of does do research, depending on the person. Like, if it's a last minute decision to, disguise himself as someone, he's not gonna have time to do the research. But, like, there are times when he will actually study the people around him and file away in his mind that this would be a good person. Maybe I might need to ever disguise myself with this person at one point. But yeah, I feel like he's definitely a character that you could, I could see where he could be annoying, but he's also kind of charming and likable, and endearing could be. Marcy, I like her too. She's like Steer. She's kind of awkward. She can be awkward at times. But she's a little bit, more willing to get her hands dirty and do what needs to be done. Definitely does not fit in the rich crowd, but of course she's not. She's only partially part of it. And, like, but she, and I think it's kind of cool that she wants to be a constable. She really cares, and she, like, cares about the law. And her, interesting, her relationship with Wax. They haven't really spent a lot of time together. You find out that she was infatuated with him in the first book. And in this one, she's kind of real. There's kind of it's awkward because Wax feels guilty, and he's still dealing with the grief of his lost love that we find out in the beginning of the first book. And he wants to protect her and wants to, but he doesn't want to give her the wrong idea. So he's in a very awkward situation with the two of them. And there's tension there, but there's also tension because she's starting to realize, and you all see this through the villain too. It is pointing out to Wax that he's one of the he is part of that rich crowd of people, that rich society. He's one of them. And thanks to Mary sees new co-workers, with help from them, she realizes that it's kind of frustrating because they need him. He can get into these places. Because of his nobility and everything, and his title and all that, this allows him to walk around and get into these places and get these answers. And he has a very privileged existence, so it's like they need him, but they don't like it. They don't like that they need him. And I wonder if that's going to come to head in the third or fourth book. I mean, at one point they do, when they are looking at a victim of the villain, of the bad guy, Wax said something, brings to attention that once again this seems to be about him. And Mercedes like, well, not everything has to be about you, kind of response. But then, of course, she also realized, well, okay, yeah, this is kind of about him because the bad guy, has been communicating with him particularly and pointing things out to him, and his uncle most likely is involved too. So eventually, I don't know if they're gonna ever. I don't know if him and Marissa are gonna get together. I think she's gonna grow up and they're just gonna be really good friends. I don't know, maybe it could happen though. I mean, Brandon Sanderson isn't big on the romance. He does sometimes include it, I think, but it's not like a big thing, a big plot point that he includes in his books. And even when he does include it, it's not super romantic or anything. It's not like, or super like, where there's gonna be sexy times or anything like that. It's very sweet at times when he does include it. But I still don't think I don't know if the two of them are ever gonna actually get together. I think she's gonna grow out her little crush. But I also, I vaguely remember the first Mistborn era books, but I do, it's fun to hear them reference different people, from the previous trilogy, and how people look at those people now, and how they see them as gods, and, heroes, and stuff like that, and they have names for them. Like, there's the Survivor Church, and the Survivorist, and I cannot remember what the other group was called. There are two groups. So this, this one, like I said, I like it, but I can see where, it is very different from the previous Mistborn trilogy. It has very much a detective police procedural kind of thing to it, which that's like I say I don't like detective stories, but I think it depends. Like, this has a bit of a detective feel to it, but it also is very like, fantasy sci-fi blend. Like, I could see people saying this is like sci-fi. The whole Mistborn power, allomancy, and Feruchemy. I never learned how to say that word. That other type, power, Mistborn power. It does feel like science fiction with the way Brandon Sanderson's powers are very intricate, and they have kind of he always gives them an explanation. That like he never does. I've not seen him do fast magic systems in his books so far. Like, there's, it kind of has a science feel to it with his. So I could see. So I see where you make the case of this being kind of a science fiction feel. But, I mean, I still consider it fantasy myself. But like I said, when you blend, but I like that with detective stories that have that other genre type stuff. And sometimes detective stories are more appealing, in TV or movie format. Now, I'm not gonna watch like shows like Law and Order or CSI or anything like that. I have no interest in that at all. In fact, I roll my eyes whenever I come to work and I see someone will put that on, has that on the break room TV. And I always kind of have an idea who it probably is that is watching that, who picked that channel. Like, I do have certain coworkers where I know the type of stuff they're gonna watch, or at least that they're gonna put on in the break room. But yeah, if it's like, but yeah, there's certain genres that if it's, now I'm never gonna I'm rarely drawn, I'm rarely drawn to romantasy, personally. So that's a different case. Like, I'm probably, because I'm not interested in the romance. I mean, I want there to be romance in a story, but I'm not interested if romance is the main thing. Like, one of the main things where the fantasy elements are secondary. So, but anyway, but yeah, I'm enjoying this, and it's a very fast-paced story. That's the other thing that makes it different. The first Mistborn trilogy was very slow, well, this is a little bit more fast-paced of a story. So, in fact, I'm almost at I'm in the middle of chapter 14, and there's 26 chapters. So I'm getting through this quickly. And so I did start this one, which is a slower book. And I don't have a lot to talk about this one, because it feels like I read a lot, but I really didn't. I mean, like, I've only read this much. But that's because, so this story is basically this woman, Catherine Stern. I think she's British. And she heard about this famous, this jewel called the Three Brethren that's been missing for centuries, and she has reason to believe it might be real, that it's real, and so she goes to Istanbul to talk to the jewelers there. But they all, every time, when she's talking to people, they're kind of dismissive. They say it's just a myth or a legend, it's not real. But she is determined to find it. And so that's the main plot. But throughout this first section, you get the background of the jewel and the gem and everything, and its history and how it came to be and all that. So that's why it feels like I read a lot more than I did. But according to this, I think there are going to be 3 plot points. There are going to be 3 perspectives, because it says follows 3 very different people. And I guess they're obsessing over this gem, the Three Brethren. Yeah, it says their quest is for the Three Brethren, a legendary jewel that casts a shadow over all that came in contact with it. So I'm guessing the next section is going to be another character, a different person who's wanting to know about the jewel and stuff. But I always have a soft spot for these kind of historical thriller mystery stories, because, and people that in the modern day find out about something about the past, so they're trying to investigate and figure it out. Not a detective, but just an average person trying to, find out this history, and if it's true, if it's fact, and then in learning about it, like us going back and forth between the person trying to do the research and the whole event itself, like this actual history. I mean, that's probably why I like Kate Morton so much, is that it's always this woman who finds something of the past and decides to do research on it and find out what happened and basically investigate. So I guess in a way I like stories about scholars and just the person who wants to know knowledge, wants to know something. So yeah, I'm just kind of focusing on Shadows itself, so that's why I haven't read a lot of this. But I'm gonna read a good chunk of this late morning, and then I will read, and then I will pick up this as well. So these are the 2 books I'm currently reading. I am also, before I get to the books I purchased, I'm also listening to some podcast. You guys know I've been listening to a lot of history podcasts, but I've kind of taken a break from those and have discovered some more reading podcasts. Like the first one I checked out originally was this this one called The 10 Works of Literature, discussing our 10 great novels of literature. And it did, and I really enjoyed it. It was these two older men that have, discussing great works of literature. It was back in 2018 when, unfortunately, it didn't continue. I don't know why. 2018 was right before COVID, so maybe that got in the way of them continuing it. And I think they were older gentlemen, so I don't know, maybe COVID affected them, or they just decided not to continue, or maybe they did and they continued the podcast somewhere else. But that was kind of disappointing because there are so many great works of literature that I would love for them to discuss. Like talk about why they're great, or like what is it, what did they add to the Western canon? And maybe even go beyond the Western canon, maybe go to the Eastern canon and talk about a lot of those books. And like they're, and they introduced me to a couple books that I never heard of, like Zorba the Greek. That sounded like a really interesting read. And The Leopard. And then, funnily enough, I did learn the booktuber, I don't know if she can consider herself a booktube or not, because she's also, she also focuses on filmmaking. I can't remember. Emma Angelina, I think her channel name is. I think it's Angelina. Or Sarcastic Fish. And she read The Leopard. So that got me really excited when I realized, when I heard her in one of her vlogs, she mentioned that book, or she meant like she had gone to Italy, did a vlog about her trip to Italy, and she mentioned reading that book, or she saw a copy of the book at the bookstore. Like she mentioned that book in passing. So like I had to pause and rewind. I was like, oh my god, is that the same book? And I feel like I haven't read it yet, but the way, they talked about that book, and it just sounded right up my alley. Like, it kind of reminded me of War and Peace, but it's a shorter version of War and Peace, and it's Italian. It takes place in Italy. But it's basically the aristocracy of Italy falling apart during the war. I think it's World War II. And the consequences of that, and them having to accept that. I love those kinds of books. I haven't read enough of them though, but I do like them when I read them. And like I said, I liked what I've read so far of War and Peace. I just haven't picked it up again. And I need to. But so anyway, since then, I've been looking for other reading podcasts. Of course, I remembered that Kris and Mads, I think that's their channel name. Their channel is also a podcast. So I was like, oh, let me look for them. And so I'm watching them on YouTube as well as not at the same time, but I'm both going back and forth between listening to their podcast and watching them on YouTube. Now, because I'm so used to YouTube, often, it's easier for me to just go back to YouTube, because I've also finally discovered two other podcasts, Reading Glasses and Well Read Podcast. And they're just really, if I can post the link, if I can get to the link, I will post it for you guys in the description box if you guys have access to podcast. But they're really great. They, both channels kind of discuss, they give recommendations, they discuss genres. They of course talk about what they're reading, and they also do one of them talks about in each episode they will have a book tech that they will talk about and talk about how it works and if it's worth getting. One of them will also read, people will message them, email them about questions and ask advice, and they will do an episode where they, about one of their, I think it's Reading Glasses who does this. Reading Glasses, they will take one of the emails, and if one of their fans asks them a question, they will discuss it in an episode. Or if they're looking for a recommendation, they will talk about their wheelhouse and the person's wheelhouse. The person, they ask the person to list their wheelhouse, which is basically the type of things that they read. And I think both of them will kind of discuss not just genres, like the Well Read podcast talked about the golden age of mystery. So that included talking about Agatha Christie and Dorothy L. Sayers. Like one of the duo is a big fan of the golden age of mystery novels. So she really dived deep and talked about the history of that and the modern versions of that, like in recommending books. And then the Reading Glasses podcast will also talk about issues, like the difference between, and how the difference between book buying and collecting books. Are book buying and reading books now they're a different hobby, which I think that has been a topic on BookTube recently. And talk about, they do an episode on jailbreaking your Kindle. So if you're a person who doesn't want to use Amazon anymore, but still has a Kindle and is not sure if they want to switch to Kobo or Kobo, then they talk about that and what you can do, you don't have to completely change your Kindle, you can still keep it, but find a way to break, allow, so you won't have to worry about your, if Amazon, Kindle could take away your books because you don't technically own your books, you're licensing them. They call it jailbreaking, so there's an episode on that. They do episodes on, they just, I'm trying to think what other episodes I've seen. I just listened to, I don't think I'm done with it, where they talk about, I think that was that one. It might have been the Well Read Book Club. Well Read podcast, but one of, where they talk about epic journeys. I started listening to one where they talk about epic journeys. I think there's I can't remember what else, but I really like how they do have their own merch, so they use the money from that to take care of their pets and everything and all that. So if you want to help, if you get into them and want to help them, I'm sure they would greatly appreciate that. And so they're really great they're both podcasts are really great. They're both really fun. And they do, both of them kind of get me into, and I like how they both talk about variety. They don't just stick to one genre. They also talk about a variety of different genres or types of books, which I really appreciate that. Because, I definitely like more than one genre of books. And, sometimes it takes another reader to get me influenced to try something else, but not directly tell me, you should read this book, or you should try this genre. It's not like they're telling me, but sometimes if someone is talking about it, I'm listening to a video that talks about it, or a podcast, and I might consider giving it another shot. They definitely got me interested in mysteries again in their episodes, in the episode about, like I said, I cannot remember which podcast talked about it, but I think it might have been the Well Read podcast. They're the ones who talk about the golden age of mysteries. They definitely got me reconsidering the mystery, because I have read some Agatha Christie, and I did like them. I enjoyed them. They were fun. But I feel like when that kind of genre is one that I should, feel more comfortable taking in small doses, not reading on one back to back. Because it's not, after a while, it can seem very samey and repetitive, and even if it's different characters or a different mystery, it can still seem like it still has similar beats, and which I think for a lot of people that can be very comforting too. But for me, it's more just after a while, I can potentially get bored with with certain genres if I read back to back the same type of story. So that's why I say I don't love it, but I don't hate it. But yeah, both are great. If you're looking for, or if you like podcasts and you're looking for a book-related podcast, please check out the Reading Glasses podcast or the and Kris and Mads also, of course, and or the Well Read podcast. And like I said, that if you want to listen to this, it's only one season, but this podcast, 10 Great Works of Literature, or maybe they were only going to do one anyway. I mean, it sounded like they were thinking about doing another one, and there are so many books, and like I said, I think they could expand the Eastern canon. I think that would be great too if they could do that. If they had continued, if they could have done that, past tense, because sadly they didn't continue. But if you're curious, like, they do talk about, they talk about a bunch of popular ones like Pride and Prejudice, The Heart of Darkness. They got me interested in checking that one out, actually checking out that novel. And they also mentioned ones that I have copies of, and they're very well known, like Don Quixote, but I just haven't read it yet, and it was a motivation to eventually read it. But like I said, it's only one season, so they didn't continue. As far as I know, anyway. I haven't seen any other where, But, I mean, I could look at it again and just check. I could see if they've gone beyond anything else. So, yeah, but yeah, I wanted to just talk about those a little bit and tell you guys about those if you guys are interested. So, now let's get to my most recent purchases. So, first I'm going to show you the books I got at the Outpost the other day. I had decided to go, on Saturday. Normally I don't like going on Saturday because it's often really crowded and busy. But I decided, because right now they're transitioning to a new coffee shop in there. Because there was some drama with the old one, and sadly they let them go. I have very conflicting feelings because I like the bookstore itself. I appreciate that it's there. It's a used bookshop. It's in walking distance, and I like being able to go there. And it allows me to try out different types of books. Because, for years I was all about the fantasy. But now it lets me try different genres and great prices because it's a used bookstore. I really appreciate that. So the bookstore itself I like. But then there was some drama with the coffee shop. And I actually like the woman who owns the coffee shop. And so that, sadly they parted. They went their separate ways. And so now they're trying to they got a new coffee shop, but it hasn't arrived. They haven't moved in yet. So people haven't been going there as much. I mean, they do offer, free coffee as a substitute until this coffee shop, this cafe shows up and everything. But, I have very, like I said, mixed feelings because I like the bookstore itself, the physical bookstore and its presence, but, it's a very complicated, messy situation. It's a sad situation. But hopefully their relationship with this new one will be satisfactory for them. And, so it wasn't, basically, I explained that because it wasn't as crowded as it normally is on a Saturday. It did pick up a little bit. And also I went there early in the morning, so that kind of helped. Like right after breakfast I went. So as usual, I stuck to my 3-book limit. So first we have a book that I did see at Books A Million. I was kind of looking for a horror book. And this is not traditional horror, this book that I saw at Books A Million. It's survivalist horror. And there might be a monster or some kind of horror. But I was like, I don't want to spend $25 on a book that I'm not sure if I'm gonna absolutely love it or if it's not my kind of thing. I ended up seeing it at the Outpost. So I was like, let me give this book a shot because I would only be spending $4 individually on this book. So I'm gonna get it. And that is The Terror by Dan Simmons. I don't know if this is based on true. It sounds like it's based on true story, but it's fiction. But the book itself is fiction, I think. But it's based on. It says the 1845 Franklin expedition. And it uses it was the first to use steam-powered vessels. They're looking for the Northwest Passage. And it's the Arctic Circle where this takes place. And they end up getting stranded there. So not only are dealing with cold weather, ice, and it's very dark. It's getting endlessly cold. Poisonous rations. The coal supply, which to keep them warm, is dwindling. It says the ship is buckling. I'm kind of, as you can see, I'm looking at the back. The ship is buckling against the crushing ice. But apparently there might be a monster out there, an unseen monster. A predator. And it's trying, as it says, there's something out there in the frigid darkness. An unseen predator stalking their ship. A monstrous terror clawing to get in. And obviously this was made into a series. I don't know if the series is still going on or like if this was a limited series. But yeah, this is the adaptation tie-in edition. And Ciarán Hinds was in it, I guess. He played one of the Rochesters at one point, and he also played Wentworth, Captain Frederick Wentworth in Persuasion, and actually the one I now own, that adaptation. So right now I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to read it now, and I feel like I need to pick it up. This always happens where there's like, I'm like, thinking, I want to pick up a new book, or it's a book that it's a type of book that I have never tried before, or I'm normally not interested, but now I'm interested in it. I'm like, I feel like, I should pick it up sooner rather than later, but then I'm in the middle of a book, or there's so many older books on my shelf that I need to get to, and this one hasn't even been shelved yet, and, I'm trying the method of turning my books so that, you see the pages, but then when I read the book, unless I decide to not keep the book, when I read, I turn around so the spine is facing the outside. So that's the reward, is that you see the colorful spines. So no, I don't keep it like that. And I know a lot of people don't like that. There are people, but it's none of anyone's business if me or anyone else wants to do that, or even if they want to leave their pages facing out all the time. It's no one's business. I never really understood why people are like, so judgmental of someone's bookshelf, like as soon as they see it. I mean, I guess, yeah, if you're showing your own bookshelf, yeah, you might be inviting judgment, but unless you're doing it on purpose, like unless you're deliberately doing, like, you have a reason why, like if you're just having it in the background, it shouldn't matter to anyone how someone sets up their books. It is their shelf. You only look at it. You don't live with that shelf. So it's not your shelf. It doesn't belong to you. You don't own it. So I feel like someone being like, oh, I don't like how you do your shelves, or oh, that's ridiculous, or like, if someone likes to do the rainbow shelf, which, yeah, I've done the rainbow shelf a couple times, and I like it. I think it's pretty. And I get why some people don't. Fine, if you don't like it, and you have your reasons because, oh, I can't find books, or like if you have a lot of series, and then each book, each spine of a book is a different color, and you feel like that would be, or you can't find books or whatever. Like, I understand why someone wouldn't want to do it, but if someone wants to do that and likes the idea and think it's pretty, so what? Let them do that. Yes, people like aesthetics. People care about their aesthetics, but it doesn't make them any less of a reader. It doesn't mean that they don't read the book just because they like a pretty shelf. And that it doesn't mean just because someone prioritizes how a shelf looks does not mean they're not reading their books. It's not like they're only spending their time just making the shelf look pretty and that's all they care about is, making the books look good and everything. Like, then, so, I don't know, that has always irked me and bothered me people, and I think I've complained about this before, and I'm not complaining about it now because people have said something recently. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because I have changed my shelves to where doing this idea of having the pages out, and then when I read the book, turning the book around so you see the spine. Like, I'm currently doing that. That's the only reason I bring it up. And, I mean, it doesn't matter now because my books are not going to be on camera anymore. I just decided not to do that anymore. Because, I mean, I didn't just, my shelf, as you guys know, is on the other side. Most of my shelves are on, like, not in the range of my camera, and I would have to get up and move, and I don't have a chair or anything. I would have to be standing the whole time. So, I guess I can use my desk chair. So, so I don't like doing that. So you guys don't see my shelf anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it's just, I bring it up because, like I said, I did make that change. And I just think, and it just got me thinking about that again, how I know there are times when people will do things like rainbow shelves because they think it's pretty, and people get all bent out of shape about it. It's like, it's not your shelf. You're not the one looking for books. And you're not the one who's, and why do you care if a person wants to make their shelf pretty? It does not mean they are not reading books just because they prioritize how a shelf looks. That doesn't prove anything. That does not prove that the person's not reading their books. The only thing that proves the person's not reading their books is if you find out that they talk about a book and then what they're talking about is non-existent. Like that's the only way to prove that someone is not reading a book, is if when they try to talk about it, what they talk about doesn't make any sense. Like, you've read the book and that's not even what happened in the book. And I'm not talking about interpretation. I'm talking about the literal plot is not what happened. Then that's the only thing that proves someone has not read a book. Is if what they talk about, what they say about the plot is not what happens. That's the only thing that proves to you that someone has not read a book. How a person, like, prioritizing, now they're, I mean, if they are, like, complaining about, there's too many words, then, or like, I only read the dialogue, which happened recently that was a big thing on TikTok, where there were people who made TikTok videos where they complained about there's too many words, or like, I only read the dialogue, then that makes me question if they read the book or not. It makes me question if they read the book or not. Or, that's like, that's, how did you get, like, that makes me question them a little bit. But it's also none of my business what they decide to do. But it was a very fascinating topic. I think a lot of people were, like, confused by it, bewildered by that, and curious about it. Like, why would someone, But other than that, like, how someone prioritizing the look of their shelves, and if they want to waste their money on a pretty book, that's up to them. But yeah, anyway, like, it's not like that came up recently. I've recently been exposed to that. Like, that happened a while back. I was just, again, because of the change I've made with my shelf, I did start thinking about that, how people will complain about someone's bookshelf if they're like, or criticize someone if they decide to do rainbow shelf or something, or decide to only show the pages, their book pages and not the spines, or I think it's one of these things. And I think also, like, because of how bookstores do and how it's been ingrained in us readers, that you show the spines and everything, and like, people, if you don't do that and you only show the pages, then that's like weird, and what's wrong with you? But anyway, okay, so back to what I'm talking about, the books I purchased. So yeah, I'm gonna. So like I said, I feel like I should read it now, but I don't want to. It's like I have all these older books and I've had for a long time that I need to get to. So we will see what happens. And then of course I'm in this position where I want to participate in Booktober, but then I'm starting thinking about all the horror books that I want to read, and and I want to do dark academia. So it's very. I was thinking, I was in the when I was watching the announcement videos for Booktober. I was like, I want to get back into Booktober, but then so I don't know. We will see what happens. Okay, so next is, so you guys know I've been very much into Rome right now. I've tried reading some nonfiction about Rome, and then I was like, let me get to some historical fiction on it, and I saw this one, which is the novel of Ancient Rome by Stephen Saylor. Kind of one of those saga stories about, looking at the history of Rome and how this empire came to be through the eyes of these two families, and showing all the important events and everything. So it's kind of like what I think his name is Richard Rutherford does. Like, he did Princess of Ireland. But that one, how that one is, which I still have not finished that book. I need to pick that one up, and get back to it. But that whole, so it kind of does a similar thing, or like the same thing with books like although Paris is not a family saga. Paris was more of a, you look at all these different people, and eventually they were going to cross paths probably, and I did get, and of course there was the free bookmark, and this one was the first one I've ever seen like an actual books on it. So, and I think it's inspired by school, kids going back to school, because it has like books and apples, and it has kind of a very autumnal red color. So I picked this one. But yeah, that is Roma, the novel of ancient Rome by Stephen Saylor. And then the last one, at least from my purchase there, is Elizabeth I. And I actually, on Thrift, if you shop on Thrift Books, eventually they will start recommending you books you're going by what books you purchased. And that's how they decide what to recommend to you. And right now, because a lot of my recent purchases have been, author books have been like, medieval history and all that, and so they have recommended some biographies about Elizabeth I, and I put them on my wish list for Thrift Books, which is, for me, like, no one else sees that wish list, so it's just more to keep me organized, so for my next set of purchases, to keep me organized so I won't have to go searching. But so I don't know if this one is on there, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, let me get it. And so this is, like I said, I don't know if it's on the Thrift Books, but it's Elizabeth I and Somerset. And it doesn't have like a subtitle or anything like that, it just says Elizabeth I. So I have her collected writings, as you've seen before, and I also have that book by Alison Weir, Lady Elizabeth. And I thought I could do like a reading project. This could become like a little reading project for me, although this would be silly, but I don't know how to go about those. Like, I don't know where to start and how the best method for going about those reading projects, that type of stuff. Because I have the ideas and books I can put together, but it is a commitment staying with the one type of book. And as much as I love the idea of reading these big books, sometimes I have trouble committing because, to those type of books, because it's, but I need to stop looking and thinking, well, more like I could just spend more time on a particular type of book instead of sharing a bunch of books for you guys. I should think about it that way instead. But it's such a struggle because I do like a lot of books, and I do, and as soon as, I buy more, I'm like, all of a sudden I want to read those books, but then I have so many older books. And I know a lot of people probably tell me that maybe I need to stop buying books. But anyway, I really should, like I said, I really want to look at it more. I should really look at it more as a project. Really get into the project aspect of it and just focus on those projects only. But I have so many other books to read. But I will figure it out eventually. I will. But yeah, so there, like I said, I don't have a lot because this is a biography. This is a biography of Elizabeth I, so it's not, there's no really plot to talk about. It's just the history of Elizabeth I, her life story. But yeah, so okay, now let's look at my thrift books. Most recent haul there. Okay, so first we have, this is actually the first book that came to me that I got, and that is Antonia Fraser's The Wives of Henry VIII. So, I actually did see this at the Outpost, but it was a hardback book, and hardbacks, yeah, compared to like Books A Million or Barnes & Noble, it's only $5 there. But that would mean that I couldn't get unless I got mass markets, because they do have some of them there. I couldn't, unless I only got this book, I couldn't, and what's nice, I couldn't buy anymore because it will be $20 to get, because, if I got 2 books, one hardback, that would be $5, and then a paperback is $4, so, so I would still be spending more than I usually do. So I was like, let me just stick to, look for this either on Amazon or maybe see for it on Thrift Books. I ended up getting on Thrift Books. Don't worry, I didn't buy out of Amazon, but this is about, you guys, famously, Henry, that Henry VIII had 6 wives. Catherine of Aragon was the first one, and then you have Anne, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Parr was the last one. I do not remember. I feel bad that I cannot remember the one in between Catherine and Anne. Let me see if it says on the back. Oh, okay, so it doesn't say this. I don't know. Remember her name. What? Maybe there's a. Oh wait, let me. Is it Anne Neville? Was that the other one? Or no, Anne Neville is. Let me see if there's any. I feel like it's bad that I don't know her name. The other. Oh wait. Okay. Oh no, Catherine Parr is. I thought. So Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Parr, Catherine. Oh, okay. So part 4 is Anna of Cleves and Catherine Howard are together in the same part. Okay, so maybe Catherine Howard was not married to him that long. Catherine Howard, maybe she was not married to him that long. So Catherine Howard was after Anne of Cleves. I feel bad that I couldn't remember her name. But, oh, this had bookmark in it. Okay, so it's not a... Oh, that's funny that this bookmark... It's funny that this bookmark is from where I live. That's a coincidence. Not that it's not a pretty bookmark, so nothing really to show you guys. It's plain. But oh wait, I'm forgetting. I did not. This is the pile that I got from the Outpost. For some reason, I was still thinking I was looking at thrift books, but no, this is the I got from the Outpost. So the bookmark is still in there. But like I said, it's nothing really to show you. It's a plain bookmark. With the probably the place it came from. But yeah, so I'll read the back to you guys. In the popular imagination, the unfortunate consorts of Henry VIII survives feminine stereotypes. The betrayed wife, the temptress, the good woman, the ugly sister, the bad girl, and mother figure. Now, one of our leading historians restores these women to human dimensions while unraveling the web of forces that raised them to be the throne and sometimes brought them to the headsman block. Under Antonia Fraser's intense scrutiny, Catherine Aragon emerges as the scholar queen who steadfastly refused to grant a divorce to her royal husband. Anne Boleyn is absolved of everything but a sharp tongue and an inability to produce a male heir. Catherine Parr is revealed as a religious reformer with a good sense to tack with the treacherous winds of the Tudor court, and we gain fresh understanding of Jane Seymour's circumspect wisdom in the touching dignity of Anne of Cleves and the youthful naivety that led Catherine Howard's fatal indiscretions. The Wives of Henry VIII interweaves passion, power, personality, and politics into a superb work of history. So yeah, and it is Tudor-tember, but September is almost done, so I will not. I don't think I will be getting to doing some. I guess I could try, but it wouldn't be. It would only be like a week of reading. But anyway, sorry, I spotted this famous portrait of the Anne of Cleves. Because in paperbacks, the picture is always hard, black and white. But I think that's because, it would be expensive to get colored photos. But, so I'm excited to read that. And then, I'll go ahead and show you the other Tudor-related book. So this is Alison Weir's, the second book in the Six Tudor Queens. So this is the one about Anne Boleyn. A King's Obsession. Now, I don't want to make the same mistake I made with the other Bowling Girl, where I only watched the adaptation and I attempted to read the book at some point. I don't remember when, and I never got to it. I started to, and then I lost interest. But in my defense, it was during time. I wasn't at that time a hardcore Tudor fan and into this kind of history. So, now I really am into it and really am interested in this subject matter, so I don't think that will happen. Yeah, so it's immaculately researched and convincing. This tale of Anne's ascent and demise cannot escape the comparisons with Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall series. Which that's a funny blurb, because it's complimented, but it is being compared to the Hilary Mantel's book. Barely a teenager, Anne is sent by her opportunistic father to serve at the royal court of the Netherlands. There and later in France, Anne thrives, preferring to absorb the works of progressive writers rather than participate in courtly flirtations. Anne isn't completely inured to the longings of the heart, but when she does fall in love, the powerful Cardinal Wolsey overrides her wishes. When the King of England himself, Henry VIII, asks Anne to be his mistress, she spurns his advances, reminding him that he's a married man who has already conducted an affair with her sister Mary. Anne's rejection only intensifies Henry's pursuit, but given that Queen Catherine is aging and has failed to provide the king with a male heir, the opportunity to elevate the Boleyn family and exact vengeance on her envious detractors too tempting for Anne to resist, even if as it ultimately proves to be her undoing. So I'm guessing this is gonna look at Anne in a new light, like look at her in a light of that she, like that she's complicated, and that she's like she's just a woman got caught in the middle of this kind of messy relationship with King Henry, who's obsessed with her. So I saved this book for last because it's off topic, a little bit different, and that is the Makeko Sisters by Junichiro Tanzaki. Sorry, again, another language I do not know, so I don't know how to pronounce how to pronounce the names. But this was one of these ones that I had put on my wish list on Thrift Books. I didn't realize, and then Tristan in the Classics talked about this book because he did a video on Japanese literature. And like if you want to get into classic Japanese literature. And I think in his book, he hosts a book club. I think. I don't know if I'm getting him mixed up with that other booktuber whose name escapes me at the moment, but there's another booktube, the Read, is it Read? Anyway, so I think he does have a book club too, and currently they are reading Japanese. They were in their book club last year, I think it was. They were reading Japanese classics every couple months. And he brought up, actually, that might be what got me to add to my wish list on Thrift Books anyway, because he might have mentioned them reading it, so I looked it up. And right now I've been kind of looking for Japanese literature, because, I'm still focused on the Filipino literature, because I feel like that's not as known to people, and I want to change. I'm still trying to change that, and, but I also want to do Japanese literature because I feel like everyone reads Korean literature and Chinese literature, and no disrespect to that type of, I think that's important too, but I wanted to come at it, I wanted to read some Asian literature that that's not as, although Japanese literature I think is very well read too, but, especially, I think manga is Japanese, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. So, but unfortunately I can't read the back because there's a price sticker on the back, which is really annoying. I was actually hoping that this would be the vintage classic edition, but I should have known because Thrift Books, there's no guarantee you're going to get the cover that you see on screen. The one you pick is not necessarily going to be the one that you want. And I'm not going to go waste time to, send it back because it's like, I wanted this cover. Because they might not be able to give it to me anyway. They might not have it anymore. Or, they were just using it for image. But I can't really I can't read the back. But I do believe this takes place during World War II. Or right after World War II. And you have a group of sisters. And one of them needs to be married off to a rich guy, and okay, so it says the eldest refused to compromise her values, but she's worn down by money problems. Okay, yeah, so the oldest sister has to move to Tokyo with her husband. Okay, so the last sentence, Tanzazaki employs a realism that lays bare the pride that is the plague of the aristocracy. It is realism without harshness, for it is fused with nostalgia for a vanished era. I feel like this could be a theme where, like, aristocracy, books about the aristocracy and what happened to it, because there's quite a few books. I got War and Peace, the Leopard. This one seems to focus a little on that as well. There might be others that I own that kind of focus on the aristocracy, the downfall of the aristocracy. But, yeah, it just got me really excited. And also, I want to read more books about sisters. As someone who is a younger sister, I'm always, curious about books that focus on sister relationships and that whole dynamic, whether it's a positive relationship or a negative. I think it's very interesting to read that kind of love story between two sisters or just any siblings. But the cover's actually not bad. The cover is kind of pretty in its own way, even though it's like not colorful or anything. It's like the book definitely feels vintage. And I like this color purple, this Dimetap purple. That's what it looks like, Dimetap color. The color of Dimetap. If you guys remember that medicine, I used to take it all the time, and I loved it because it's grape. It tastes like grape. I don't know if there's any other flavors, but what I would always get is grape flavor. So I always love that. I did not mind taking that medicine. But, so yeah, this is pretty. This is pretty in the typography. But I like the image of the flowers. Like, they use flowers on there. And tea, which, is a common drink in, Japan. And, I think it's a very, like, eastern part of the world drink. And they brought it to the Western world. But yeah, it's not exactly the one I wanted. I wanted the vintage edition, which was a lot more purple than this. But I didn't get it. I'm not surprised because, like I said, thrift books, not necessarily the cover you want is the cover on the screen is not necessarily the cover you're gonna get. So, but yeah, so that is what I got. So we have the Makeko sisters. Sorry, I'm gonna try to do what Steve Donahue does, which is a book pyramid. I've done that. I've attempted that before. So, Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession. Okay. Okay. Dang it. Okay, so, yeah. The Wives of Henry VIII by Antonia Fraser. Okay, I don't know how Steve does this. We have, Roma by Stephen Sailors. The Terror by Dan Simmons. And last, we have Elizabeth I by Kate Somerset. Okay, so it's my attempt at a book pyramid. I do not know how Steve does this, but then again, he is a guy, so he might get a little bit stronger than me. Because that is, guys are biologically stronger than women. Just a little bit. Physically. But, So that is my book update and a little bit of a book haul. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope your reading is going well. Feel free to share anything in the comments of what you're currently reading. If you've read any of the books, if you didn't like them, don't say anything, because I want to read them at the moment. But if you have read them and liked them, feel free to share that. I will appreciate that. And although if you have any recommendations for, like, nonfiction, biographies on, like, well, actually, you know what? If you have a nonfiction biography on Henry VIII that you think is the best one, please share that in the comments, because I'm trying to, I do have one on Thrift Books and Amazon that I've saved, I put on wish list. But if there's one you guys recommend, if any of you have read this kind of history and you have a biography on Henry VIII that you think is the best one, feel free to share that in the comments below, because I am looking for that as well. And also, like I said, please check out Reading Glasses podcast or the Well Read podcast. If you follow Kris and Mads, they have a YouTube channel, a booktube channel. They also have a podcast. It's the same, basically the same thing. It's just a different way of absorbing their content. Please check out those as well. And I hope your reading is going well. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.